Want help to grow your business? Download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.
Welcome to Grow Your Business. I'm Muffy Churches, and in this session, we're going to have a look at how to develop your emotional intelligence for increased success. Now, I'd like to put the term emotional intelligence into context for you as we get started. It is a skill, it's a life asset that we can develop, and it allows us to, it enables us to actually make mindful choices about how we think and behave in emotionally charged moments that are important to us, and where the result and the outcome is important. Now, the opposite of being emotionally intelligent in those times is to sort of go into what we call the knee-jerk response. It's that primal reaction that we all know so well. And when we go there, we're not really in control, we're not thinking, we're just reacting. And those reactions can be harmful for us, they can burn bridges, and we usually walk away with a bit of regret. So they're things that we want to avoid if we possibly can. Now, when we look at success and relationships and organizations, one thing to remember is how important our relationships are in terms of our success, because we know that the success of an organization is really going to be very equal to the success of the relationships that it creates internally and externally. So in other words, if customers are looking at our organization for business, they will actually buy us, in a sense, the relationship that we create with them. They will buy us in the same way that they would buy the product or the service. And in terms of internal customers, what we need to remember is that research shows that employees they're far more productive, and they're also more innovative, and they tend to stay with the company longer if they feel emotionally safe with the leadership in that business. So it's a good thing that we're having a look at emotional intelligence for those reasons. Let's have a look at what we're going to cover together today. And first thing we want to have a look at, these are just going to be brief modules. We'll have a look at emotional intelligence and how it stacks up against IQ, two different things. What is one more important than the other, for example? We'll have a look at how to define EQ. We'll dig into the four concepts that kind of create the framework of what it is. I'll take you through a few pieces of data around research findings so that you feel really good if you're going to put an effort into trying to increase your emotional intelligence. I'll give you some numbers to back up your effort, so to speak. We'll also have a look at EQ in relationship to your success and the skills that we tend to build as we're working on our emotional intelligence. And finally, and possibly most importantly, we're going to be having a look at how to develop EQ. Because what's important to me is that you be able to finish this session with a really clear idea as to how you can walk away, start to grow and develop it yourself with some really practical techniques. So we'll start now by having a peek at looking at the difference between IQ and EQ. Now, I know that when I grew up, I figured that my IQ, whatever that number was sort of going to be the marker or the measurement for my capability in this life. And I think they've found that up to about a score of about 115, 110, 115, which is a relatively average score, that is the case. It does drive our profession a touch. But beyond 115, there are other characteristics, there are other attributes that come into play that help us succeed and help us compete against those of you or others who may be geniuses. So some of those attributes, for example, are things like self-confidence, resilience, passion, drive, and we could say, I could list a bucket full of about 27 or 30 of them, but guess which one is the superstar? It's actually emotional intelligence. And the reason for that is, as we mentioned before, emotional intelligence is highly connected to creating effective relationships that are the framework of business success. Now, the good news here is, well, with IQ, it's genetically gifted to us. So we can't really do too much about the IQ that we're born with. But nice to know that EQ definitely is a skill that we can develop and grow. And that's what we've come together today to have a look at. Let's define emotional intelligence and take a deeper look at knowing what it is from a conceptual basis. So if I were to create an executive summary for you of emotional intelligence, I would say something like, it's our ability to recognize, to understand, and to manage our emotions in moments that are important to us. Yep. But there's more to it than that. That's a very high-level explanation. I want to take you through 4 specific concepts that actually create that framework or the foundation for what emotional intelligence is. Now, if you're able to see these words on the screen, don't be concerned about them being lacking in memory capability. I mean, these are concepts I'll just walk you through now, but when we get to the end of the session and I'm talking to you about how to practice emotional intelligence, I'll have a much easier, much user-friendly set of terms and questions for you to ask yourself. It'll be simple. But for now, let me just take you through these key concepts. It's important to have that background information. The first concept that we want to have a peek at is awareness. So this is about, in the moment, are we able, or to what degree are we able to be aware of what we're feeling? And are we able to label it? Do we know what the feeling is? It might be anger, could be frustration, it could be disappointment, it could be hurt, all sorts of negative emotions that pop up. So that first concept is, to what degree are we able to recognize that in the moment? The second concept to have a peek at is what we can call, this is about being able to identify what will happen if we allow that emotion to roll. If we run with that emotion, what will be the outcome of the situation? So in other words, what is the cause and effect? And can we understand that in that moment? So that's number 2. Number 3 is called value orientation. This is our ability in a moment to be able to identify, hook to what it is that's important to us. What do we value? What are our ethics? What's our particular goal in this moment, in this particular situation? And we're looking at it from the standpoint of what's my ideal outcome? What does it need to be? This is something, so if we can work out what our goal is in a moment, we have something to link a potentially new emotion and behavior to. That's a third concept. Fourth concept is actually the ability then in the end to strategically manage our emotions. And this is a matter of choice. So if I'm able to understand that I'm feeling something in particular, that I know it's going to lead in the wrong direction, and I then choose to pick a goal, something that I want to work toward, I can strategically choose an emotion and some behavior and some dialogue that will match that goal, and that's called strategic management of emotions. So these concepts look very separate. They look as if they have to happen in order. In fact, they don't. They all tend to happen simultaneously in a matter of seconds when we're working ourselves through some emotional intelligence, and I'll take you through how to do that when we get to the end or toward the end of the session. So now let's have a look at research findings, because I want you to have some numbers and a little bit of data to play with if you make this effort to exercise your emotional intelligence. And I think some of these are interesting. So one set of data took 515 senior executives, and they measured these executives for their levels of success, number one, but then they also measured their IQ scores, their emotional intelligence ratings, as well as their longevity and their experience in the business. And interestingly, what they found was that the more successful a senior executive was, the higher their EQ was. Now, in a separate set of research, they looked at general employees, and they took thousands of them from around the world. And I think they separated them into 3 groups. So one group being high performers, second group being medium performers, and the next group being low performers. And in this case, they found that of the high performers, they were also high scorers in their emotional intelligence, whereby in the low group, the low performers, only 1 out of 5 people, only 20% of those individuals who were low performers had high EQ. So it goes to show that there's a serious and an interesting correlation between the two. But what I also find interesting, from a research point of view, is that even though we've been very much aware of the importance of emotional intelligence over the last 15 to 20 years, we've got beautiful books written on the topic, lots of training programs, gorgeous validated EQ tools to be administered. But even with all of that in our corporate world right now, what research showed in 2016 was that our emotional intelligence in the corporate space is actually on the decline. Now that's really interesting. What they attributed that decline to was the fact that there's a lot more stress. We're stressed for time, we're stressed for producing results, and there's a general sense of sort of chaos and unease in the world. So it goes to show that I think what we can...
To continue enjoying this presentation, download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.